Welcome to Women in B2B Marketing, a show where CMOs, VPs of marketing, and all strong women leaders in B2B discuss their top tactics, strategies, and tips for building high-performing teams, leveraging trends, and ultimately rocking their marketing careers. Made by and for women, insightful for all. I'm your host and 15-year B2B marketer, Jane Serra. Let's dive in. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Women in B2B Marketing. Super excited to chat with our guest today because she was recommended by several people and we keep crossing paths on LinkedIn. So everybody welcome Sarah Noel Black to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so excited. So Sarah is the marketing consultant and host of the Tiny Marketing podcast. If you haven't check it out yet, do so. It's really great. And she is always helping fellow fractional consultants and solopreneurs drive more business with organization and prioritization, which is exactly what we're going to deep dive on today, alongside many other things, I'm sure. So welcome again, Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, we've been in the same orbit for so long and we finally get to connect.
Yes. And I know I have not yet launched YouTube. One day I will. I promise everybody. This year is my goal. But for the clips, at least, that everyone will see on LinkedIn for now, I need to get a background that compares to Sarah's because it's beautiful and artistic. And mine is like messy kids' living room situation. So I'll work on that.
Yeah, this was my husband's design. He's the one who designed it and we painted it together.
I love it. That's so cool. Did your kids help too?
They did. They were the splatters.
I love that. I just learned Sarah has 2 kids. And so when we share the video, you'll see this beautiful wall behind her. Or if you check out any of her videos on LinkedIn.
Yeah, this is the famous wall that's always behind me.
Yeah.
Someone yesterday, I was in a meeting and they're like, that's the wall. I had no idea the wall had its own reputation.
What good branding. You know what you should do? You probably already have done this, but you should sell swag that has the pattern from your wall.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like
and
a tote
all the
bag.
colors are my brand colors.
Yeah, I love it. That'd be such a great tote bag. And then you could put Tiny Marketing on it. I'll be your first customer.
Yeah, okay, I'm doing it.
Do it,
Etsy, here I come.
Right? All right, we could talk wall art all day, but how did you first get into marketing? If you could tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are today.
It was the dawn of time when I got into marketing. It feels like it was 2008 it was 2007 when I got into marketing. And I have always been part of a tiny team. So that was always just my world and all I knew. But it wasn't until I was a 1-person marketing department for a 7-company group that I realized how overwhelming it is when everything relies on you. I had 7 presidents with different visions, missions, customers, product lines, and I had to figure out how to make it work with just me. After crying in my cubicle for a while, I sat down and I started sketching out what my framework could look like, ways to test, to see what would work to make everybody happy and to actually hit our revenue goals. And I tested, reiterated, and did that for 7 years. And we were able to increase their revenue by 60 million. That was marketing attributed. And so after that, I started bouncing to other tiny marketing departments to build their foundations. And now I'm doing it with tiny marketing for the fractionals, consultants, and service providers.
Wow. So this experience with the huge company that had 7 brands under it with 7 key stakeholders asking you for things, which this feels like my nightmares.
It was.
Did that fueled everything that you're doing today and you created this system? Are you using the same framework or do you have multiple today? And this was like the start of it.
They all build off of this foundational framework. So I built the Streamline, Systematize, Automate, Outsource framework in that role. And that's what I've carried out throughout. But that Streamline piece, I've gotten a lot deeper on that. What does streamlined look like? So then I have a framework within that framework on how do we make that streamline as effective as possible.
Okay, I want to make sure I have this right. And so everybody hears this. So your foundation, right, is systematize, automate, outsource. Is
Streamline, systematize, automate,
Aha.
outsource.
Okay, I missed one. Streamline. Thanks for covering. So streamline, systematize, automate, outsource.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And the systematize piece. But that is where you have like frameworks within frameworks, specifically
it's
that
the
piece.
Streamline part that
the
has the
Streamline
frameworks.
piece. Okay.
Yeah. So I have the lean marketing engine falls within that Streamline part. So we basically look at like the one thing in each of these categories that you need to focus on and then just scrap everything else, like one core channel, one anchor content. What's the thing that you can repurpose and use throughout? One signature offer, one gateway offer, and your lead generators. But with lead generators, I break the mold on that because I think that you need to at least have two. You need a passive lead generator and you need an active lead generator.
Okay. So let's take a step back. A new customer, a new potential client comes your way. They sign with you. What's the first thing you do when you start to work with a new client?
Yes.
And is the new client typically a brand? They're all brands in a way, but like a company or a solopreneur?
Usually I'm working with a small company. So they don't have a marketing department. It's either sales led or biz dev led. That's usually who I'm working with if it's a done for you capacity. And the done with you is usually the soloists, the fractionals. So the first thing I do with no matter who you are is a strategic spark where I interview all internal stakeholders. And then I build out your strategy framework. What does the lean marketing engine look like for you specifically? And how do we reach your dream customer? So that's the first thing I do is that. So I interview all stakeholders. So everyone is heard. Everyone is like their inputs are included in the strategy. They all have buy-in because they were heard and listened to. And I actually applied what they taught me. And then, so I document the strategy for them. And then we do a review session together where all of those stakeholders come back together. We review it and they can come with their questions. They come with anything that they have pushback on. And then we review what does next steps look like? How could you do this internally if you want to? Or what would it look like if you wanted me to help you implement it?
Love that. Have you noticed any trends on where you often get the most pushback when you come to that meeting after the review?
Yes. And everybody always comes around on this. It's the gateway offer. A lot of companies are really scared of gateway offers because they're used to the typical process of discovery. You have some sort of discovery call. And then you put together a process or like a large scale scope. And then they either accept or they don't accept, and you move forward with the project. So they're really scared of changing that typical format that everybody else is doing. But when you replace that discovery and proposal, like just throw it away and toss it, and you replace that with the gateway offer, it's so much better because you're getting the information from all of these siloed departments that don't talk to each other normally. You have no clue how they're talking and what they're learning about your customer in each of those different disciplines. But when you come together with that stakeholder interview, you're getting tons of information and you can build a strategy that's built from a foundation of data. Like all of these touch points at all of these different places in the customer journey now that you wouldn't normally. And you're not going to get those crickets on the proposal because it's a very customized solution that you're providing. And they know that you know this company, you know the challenges they're going through and where they want to be 5 years from now. And your proposal isn't just a shot in the dark. This is what I do for everyone. This will apply to you too. It's customized based off of those stakeholder calls.
Makes a lot of sense where we expect a lot of personalization in every aspect of life nowadays. Right?
Yeah. And you actually get it with this and you're getting paid for it because you're doing a strategy. You're not giving away a free proposal.
Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through an example of a gateway offer and how this could work? Because I'm picturing like a team of one or a small agency that's offering their services, right? And then they're giving kind of a taste, but I might have this wrong. So if you could walk us through an
No, I mean,
example.
it really is building trust with that customer. It is a taste of what it is. So here's the basic structure of what a gateway offer should look like. It should start with an interview or a workshop. And during that time, I like to involve everybody. I like to include all stakeholders that have a say in hiring me. And even more, I like to include the people who it really doesn't matter if they have any input in hiring me, but they have some amazing insights that would inform the strategy. That's piece one, is either a workshop or an interview where you're getting all the information you need at one time. Step two is the documented strategy. And this is where you're building out the framework of what you're going to do specifically for them during the period that you're going to work with them. But it needs to be full enough that if they chose, it would stand alone as a valuable asset and they could do it internally. And then the third piece is the last piece, and that's the review session. So I always give them the documented strategy a few days before a review session. And that allows them time to get in there, make comments, really sit in it and sleep on what they've learned. Yeah. And then we do the review session. So they're informed. They have questions already. They know what they're excited about, what they're going to push back on. And we can have those conversations in real time. I can learn in real time what are the pros and the cons of what I proposed to them, the strategy that I built for them. Is there anything that you'd want tweaked? So we get everything ready during that review session. And then by the end, it's a heck yes from them. They are on board. They've been heard. And that's when they have the option of taking it and just doing the thing or working with me.
Yeah. And this is a paid process, right?
Yes.
This is okay. Because that's key. I think a lot of us, I'm okay with when you're interviewing, doing a project, but I know there's a lot of people out there nowadays that are not okay with that and they can be taken advantage of. So this is giving me a little reminder of, okay, if you're not getting paid for this, you're doing a lot of work.
No, you're getting paid. The gateway offer should be valuable enough that they can take it and do it themselves. It needs to be a valuable asset of strategy that they can implement. And so you're getting paid and you should charge between 10 and 25% of your signature offer for it. That's like strategic pricing, because if you go too low, you're just going to get people who want a cheap strategy from a smart person. And if you go too high, then they're not going to see the value of working with you and your signature offer. This is a sweet spot where you have tested their boundaries around their pricing, what they're comfortable paying.
And what's that percentage again? That's the sweet spot?
10 to 25%.
Good to know. These are great just examples for everybody out here. And especially as a lot of us are going into fractional work, something to keep in mind, everybody, or consulting on the side, which I'm a big advocate for, because you learn so much, even if you have a full-time position in-house. Doing consulting on the side, it gives you so much insight that you can then apply in your full-time as well. And gives you that. Yeah. And
I did the same thing. I consulted on the side for 10 years before I went full-time with my business.
Was this while you were working for the 7 brands as a solo marketer?
I started doing it with them, but I did it through my entire career, all of the different companies I've worked with. I never wanted one stream of income. That felt really insecure to me.
Yes. That's so fascinating. And I love that. So this is proof, everybody, that her framework works, because she was able to work for 7 brands as their marketing, drive that, what was it, $60 million increase from marketing, and do consulting on the side and start the tiny marketing business. So kudos.
Yeah. It was a fun process.
Yeah. I'm sure not so fun at first. But speaking of, can you tell us a little bit about more into a peek into your time at the company that had 7 brands that you were working for? What was that like, and who was pulling at you, and what was the tipping point that made you realize I need this framework?
Yeah. So it was a big company. they were in the construction space, and we had presidents for each of those divisions. But the people who were absolutely pulling at me were the salespeople in each of those divisions. They had a lot of opinions and they wanted to be heard. And then we had a lot of VPs. So people who wanted to move up in the company, they're in more of middle management, and they wanted their input to be included in the strategies. So there were probably like 20 people that were constantly talking to me, wanting to be included in that marketing strategy. So like I was talking about, so my strategic spark is the gateway offer that I do. But I basically use that framework of my gateway offer with that 7-company group, where I would sit down with them quarterly, the stakeholders, all of them that wanted to be heard. And I would interview them, and we would figure out what are the goals that we're going to focus on this quarter, and reverse engineer from there, build out what that quarterly marketing strategy should look like, what content we're going to focus on, and how that's going to work. And everyone was heard. We did it in a container because it was all within that one stakeholder meeting. They agreed to the strategy, and then I was able to run with it after that because I had a batching schedule that would allow me to do that.
And was that with all 7 companies or brands together, or did you have 7? You had 7 strategic sparks each quarter.
Yeah, I did it separately because they're all very different companies with different audiences. Yeah, but honestly, that's 90 minutes each. It was a lot less time each quarter than the ad hoc running to my cubicle asking a question or wanting to try something they saw someone else do.
Yeah, great point. And did you see that this did cut down on the time of people pulling at you, or did you set specific boundaries? Like, we do this here and then we don't ad hoc ask for things.
Yeah, there were big boundaries there. It was, this is when we're doing it. And if you have something that you want to try, that's something that we come to, and we choose what we want to experiment with next quarter. We'll pick one thing to experiment with each quarter.
What made you think of that, the one thing to experiment with?
It gave them the space to be able to be creative and bring their ideas to me, but it was within a container. We were able to take the time to test it. We gave it 90 days to test, validate the idea, or determine that it wasn't right for us. But I could handle one experiment a quarter.
Yeah. Yep. That's a great point. So that helps them feel heard, as you've said before. But you're then able to take control, because in a situation like this where you have so many stakeholders pulling at you, which I think many listeners can relate to, 7 brands or 1, this can happen.
Yeah.
But this gives you control again. So it's not just reacting and executing on all of these ideas thrown at you and throwing things at the wall. You are organizing, discussing with everyone, and picking one together to experiment with, but driving the strategy outside of that one based on what's working and what the data shows.
Exactly. We have a structure in place. We have boundaries around that structure, but it also allows everybody to be included within that structure.
Yeah. Love that. And it gives clear boundaries. That's I feel like going to be the word of this episode, because
you need it.
Yes. I wonder, do you also, speaking of boundaries, limit, when you're in a situation like that, limit the number of channels that you are working with? Because I guess the one experimentation kind of helps do that. But for outside of that one, everything that you're working on across 7 brands, it must be limited in some way too, right?
When you say channels, are you talking about like distribution channels, or are you talking about communication channels that they can contact me?
Ooh, let's talk about both. But I'm thinking marketing channels, so distribution channels, so ads, email, like everything that you'd have to be managing.
That was relatively easy with this group because LinkedIn was the only thing that made sense for them. And like each of their channels, they shared. They were able to have the same channel, and it was fine. So that worked out. I think that it would work out. I work with lots of different companies now, so I know that it'll work out with different channels with this structure because I'm batching. I'm basically doing all of their marketing in an intensive where it's like, I sit down, I do all of the things, schedule it all out, and then move to the next one. So that works perfectly fine with different channels.
Yeah. And that also, I'm putting a pin in the channels for comms because I want to get back to that. But before we do, you also talk about outsourcing, right? So after Systematize, it's automate and outsource. Can we dive into that a little bit more? Because you were a team of one, and you were often a team of one at various companies, and then consulting where there is no team, you are again the team of one. How do you decide where you need to hire, if it's possible to hire, versus outsource versus handle yourself?
Yeah, the first thing I always outsource is the admin work that doesn't need my brain. So like content distribution, content management, things like that is something that I would outsource to VA. And then I would basically use the Eisenhower. What is it that I don't like doing? What's not important? Whatever falls into that quadrant gets outsourced. But those are the first things I outsource. And then I'll outsource things like if everybody needs written content, that can be pretty time consuming. So I'll get writers on board. But that's the order I'll do it in. The least important, least impactful. What won't hurt if it breaks? That's the thing I'll outsource first.
Very cool. How do you get started working with a VA? Because I've heard that come up more, and possibly that's because I know more and more people that are opening up their own consultancies or agencies or fractional businesses. So the VA is needed. I feel like I would benefit so much from a VA personally for the show, for work.
They're great.
But I have a fear. And I want to get over that fear that it's like, oh, but how do I trust this person if I don't really know them? And they would be in my personal accounts. And then in my professional accounts, is that even okay? So how do you get past those fears and start working with one?
So I hired a VA for Tiny Marketing when I was still working full-time and consulting on the side, because I was in the office and sometimes clients needed responses. So I had a VA to take care of that. And what I did is just eased them into it. I didn't just throw them in. We started off by working on one client together and saw how that went. And then we would move on to the next one. So she earned my trust that way through just easing into it, starting with a few hours and a small project that wouldn't hurt anything if it broke. And then from there, as you're onboarding, just recording yourself doing things, just have a loom on as you're going through processes that you want them to take over. That's really beneficial. And having a Google Doc that just describes the things that you're doing. Or even Loom will use AI to break down what you did in that video. So that's an easy way to start outsourcing and teaching them how to do the thing.
Very cool. Are you still working with the same VA, or have you gone through several, or do you leverage more than one?
I am not working with the same VA because that was 5 years ago, and she's working full-time now. Elizabeth, hi. She's amazing still. I have had a couple right now. I'm not working with any VAs, but I've had two. I've had two that I worked with.
Why are you not working with one now? Have you just automated so much that there's less of a need?
Yeah, I automated a lot, and my processes have just made it where I didn't need it. I changed the structure of my projects where I'm able to do more of it. And I've automated things that I used to have someone else do. And honestly, I've trained ChatGPTs and built ones that could take over a lot of the things that I had someone else do before.
Wow. Do you already have a Sarah Noel Black school going through all of these processes? I know you offer a ton of insight on your podcast and on LinkedIn, so everybody follow her if you're not already. But do you provide courses that walk through all of these streamlining?
I do,
efforts?
Yeah. I have the Tiny Marketing.
Promise this is not a pitch. I'm genuinely asking everybody.
She didn't ask me this ahead of time. I have the Tiny Marketing Club where I have all of my trainings and workshops and digital products on there. So all of that is there. And you can go to any of my free workshops If you go to events.sarahnoelblack.com, I'm teaching this stuff all the time.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Which is one way we connected on LinkedIn, because I saw you posted something at like a free workshop and I missed it. And I was like, damn it, I really wanted to go to that one.
Yeah. And then
anyone who knows me knows I need all the organization. Yes. So perfect. I'll put the link in show notes for anybody interested. And if there's anything to your past free content too, we can provide that. But super helpful. I'm going to come back to what I put a pin in before, the channels we talked about for comms. Was there a boundary you set there on how all of these stakeholders could reach out to you? And do you carry that same boundary over to your customers and clients today?
Yes. At the time, all of our communication was done via our project management tool when I was working internally. I could go to one place and all of the information was in there. And I still do that today. I have a project management tool where you can comment in there. You have visibility in there. There's even like a Slack feature in it. Cool. That's what I use because I don't have to search all over the world to find that thing that you asked.
Very cool. So that's where you streamlined. I keep using all of your words over and over, but this is where you streamlined all of your channels and communications internally. Everybody had to go through this platform, through your project management system.
Yeah. And if they emailed me, I'd forward it to my project management tool. So it was there. I just need a home base.
Yep. I feel like you're, maybe you already know this, but you're a productivity expert. This is like a side thing of yours. I know you're already making things efficient for B2B folks and solopreneurs, but I feel like there's so many productivity hacks in here that I'm just in awe of as we chat.
I have always described Tiny Marketing as like the corner of marketing and productivity.
Yes.
The cross street.
I love that. So fun. Because another thing you said when we were chatting beforehand, before recording, was with all of the millions of asks coming at you from 7 different presidents and then VPs and sales teams on top of that, a big thing was like cut and focus. Mm-hmm. So can you talk us through a little bit more of that, to like getting rid of things that don't, because, we had talked about how I'm having my team brain dump everything that's on their plate right now because we are inundated. So I feel you on this million asks, hardcore.
And my reaction was start cutting.
Yes.
Yeah. So how I do it during that initial stakeholder interview is when I do it. So we'll literally write down the things that we're doing and we break it down into categories. Like, what do we actually need? We're only going to pick one. So I break it down into those categories and then we just choose the one that we're willing to do. And a lot of times it's super informed by customers. I'll have customer interviews and I'll use that insight. If we're going to do one channel, it needs to be where they all hang out. So I have those conversations to make sure it's the right channel. And if we're going to do one piece of core content that will be like the anchor of our business, it needs to be a medium that people care about, that our dream clients actually want to engage with. There's a lot of customer conversations that happen to make those decisions.
Ooh, which is a whole other thing. So we talked about how on your strategic spark, which I love the branding of that. When you have these meetings internally, where do customer conversations and customer research and interviews, how does that get factored in?
Yeah. So I do the strategic spark first. And if they choose to move and work with me on the bigger project, that's the first thing I do is the customer interviews. And I will interview their top 5 favorite customers. And that's when I'm learning what communities are they part of? What's the first thing they do when they realize that they're having some sort of challenge? Who's the first person they talk to? What channels do they go to? Ask the questions. What questions come up when they're doing X, whatever that happens to be related to the product?
Yeah.
And I have those conversations. And they completely inform the strategy and the foundation that we build in the project.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Have you noticed any trends in the responses there? Because on my end, whenever I've had customer conversations the past year or maybe 2, it's changed to very much the same answer of word of mouth, right? Like I ask a friend, I ask this group that I'm a part of. That seems to be the answer for like where they get started when they know they need something or have a problem, that they start there across the board. Is that a trend you're seeing?
Yeah, same. But I have to ask that deeper question. Where did you meet them? How were you connected? Were you guys in a community together? Because I want to be in that community. I want to find out where they're meeting the people that they trust to ask these questions. So we are part of that world.
Yes. I feel like I say this often on these episodes, but it always seems to come back to asking the right questions, right? Like leadership 101 of asking your team, but it goes across everything, like asking your customers, asking your peers, asking where they, like the right questions are so key to your success across the board.
I feel like podcasting has been a huge benefit for my clients because I've learned how to ask better questions in those interviews, and I'm literally interviewing people daily. Yeah. And now I'm able to ask better questions in those those internal conversations. I'm able to ask better questions in those customer conversations.
Yes. Wow. It's getting those journalism skills that I never went to school for. I don't know if you did, but yeah. Speaking of trends and what you're seeing, where do you see working with a lot of your clients, marketers most often go wrong?
Yeah, I would say feeling like they need to be everywhere.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest problem that people have and why marketers are getting so overwhelmed, because they feel like this is the new thing. I got to do it too. You really don't. If you're like, I'm primarily working with service businesses. You don't need a gajillion people discovering you, and you're not going to do a good job on a million channels. You can't understand the algorithm and the content that resonates on every channel. It doesn't make sense. Don't do it.
Yes, that's such a good one. 'Cause I'm feeling that personally on the events front. Now that like we're in this post-COVID world, knock on wood, I love it. Everyone wants to see each other again. I'm game. I missed everybody. But I feel like everybody wants to go to every show, and we have everyone at my company coming to me like, we need to go to this show. We need to be at this show. And I'm like, we don't need to be at every single show. And our budget says no.
I can completely see that. I always prioritize where my clients would be. Like, where could I make money? What's a profitable event to go to?
Yes. So true. So on the flip side, what do you see working? Is it just that prioritizing and cutting and focusing, or what do you see working for marketers right now?
Yeah. What's working right now is micro offers and having this micro offer ecosystem to pull people in, because it's a lot harder to get people to say yes lately, especially to bigger projects. And in the B2B space, we're sending out proposals and we're like, okay, great. I've had 60 minutes to have a conversation with you. This is the proposal that we're doing. And now you need to pay me $6,000 a month, as an example. And the commitment is a year. It's not going to work. It doesn't work in today's environment. You need to earn that trust first. So having these micro offers that earn the trust, moving them to a gateway offer where you earn even deeper trust into that signature offer, that is what works, because it's just too much of a commitment too quick.
Yes. I'm even thinking that comes into the SaaS side of B2B as well, because we're seeing a trend of people wanting to have their own demos. Like they can walk through and self-guide through a demo. The interactive demos on your site, right? So you don't have to commit to speaking with somebody and then be hounded. You're right.
I will not use a software if it requires that. I don't have the time for that. I know you're just going to try and sell the whole time and then just not leave me alone afterwards. I just want to play a little first and see if I like it.
Yeah. So anywhere where you can give a sneak peek into your tool, your services, and I think this is key, earning that trust before they make a bigger commitment, because it's scary, especially in this economy where everybody's holding their wallets tight and they want to consolidate services and tech. Signing for many thousands of dollars and a commitment for a year is just intimidating. So anything you could do to give a taste before that. is key.
Exactly. Smaller containers, micro offers. That's what's working right now.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. I feel like you give us a ton of tips and advice, tactical things, and I'm definitely going to join the Tiny Marketing Club I wrote down here. So I'll check that out. I want to have everybody learn a little bit more about the woman behind the Tiny Marketing brand. Can you walk us through any moment or person that was just pivotal in your career, like an impactful moment that changed the trajectory of what you do with your life professionally?
Yeah, my old boss, Rick, I guess, would be the person who came to mind. He was my manager when I decided to launch Tiny Marketing full time. And he had my back 100%. He encouraged me to do it, and he came on as one of my first few clients.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So I would say Tiny Marketing wouldn't exist if Rick hadn't been in my life and supported me in that.
Wow. That's powerful. I love to hear that. And I love to hear women supporting other women, but it's also really cool when you have a man supporting. I'm assuming, I should never assume that Rick is a dude.
Yeah, he's a dude.
But like also just having your back and encouraging women to thrive and go out on their own and lead. So very cool. Go Rick.
Yeah. He even got into it with the CEO who was mad that I was consulting on the side, and he defended me against him.
Very cool. I love that. There are so many people that are against, and I think there's still in a lot of employee contracts something against doing outside work while you're working for the company. And it just makes no sense because it all helps you get better at what you do.
Yeah. I've gotten infinitely better at what I do through all of these experiences that I've worked with on clients. No, that one CEO was an exception. Most of them knew I was doing it and were cool with it.
Yeah. And you never know. It could also lead to cross business and partnership. So there's that too.
Yeah, there were. Yeah. And there were like people I hired for Tiny Marketing that I was like, this person's awesome. Let's bring them in for this project at the company.
Yes. On my consulting, I've met so many amazing people that we can outsource and bring in to my full-time job. And I've done that the same. So you're right.
Yeah.
It's all about networking.
They got tested on my dime.
Yeah, exactly. That proof of concept and that first, what did you call it again? My notes are all a disaster. The gateway offer. Yeah. Yes. So it's like you already did that. So you can jump right in.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Is there one piece of advice that you would give to yourself just starting out in marketing back in the day, knowing everything that you know now and having learned everything and creating Tiny Marketing? What would you tell that young Sarah starting out?
I would say put yourself out there sooner. As soon as I started building my personal brand, everything else blew up. But I didn't do that for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have started that earlier.
How long have you been working on your personal brand?
I started focusing on it 6 months before I knew I was going to start Tiny Marketing full time. I was just like anticipating it, building contracts. I was very paranoid about taking it full time. So I had my entire year's salary worth of contracts already signed, sealed, delivered before I left and started Tiny Marketing. So I had all of those going the 6 months before I left.
Wow. If everybody can tell from our conversation today that you are very efficient, organized, and you have all of this buttoned up before you take a leap. So lower risk.
I don't love risk. I need to know that things are going to work out.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so helpful. I will drop a bunch of links, but where is the best place for any listeners to connect with you, to chat, to learn?
Yeah, if you just want to chat, I spend my time on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. It's my full name, Sarah Noel Black.
Perfect. Okay. And I'll drop all of your links in show notes too. So everybody take a look, follow her on LinkedIn. There's tons of free content. So check it out. I will be joining the club. See you in there. And thank you everybody for listening today. Thank you, Sarah, for joining and for sharing so much wisdom. Super, super helpful, especially in this time of do more with less, which I can't wait till we can stop saying that term, but super helpful.
We'll see when that happens. Thank you.
Never. And thank you everyone for listening. Share with a friend, rate, review. It helps us spread the show, spread the love, and get in front of more women in B2B marketing. Thank you, everybody.